Understanding that we have so many things in common and that we are like-hearted individuals, then this opens up for a world of possibilities for us to figure out what's the best way to collaborate and to support each other.
Gemeinsam statt gegeneinander. Kollaboration statt Wettbewerb. Im Flow mit dem Universum statt ständig auf Kollisionskurs. Ganz herzlich willkommen zu 1000 First Steps, deinem Podcast für das Größte in dir. Mein Name ist Jakob Horvath und seit ich in Costa Rica bin, komme ich immer öfter in Kontakt mit unterschiedlichen Versuchen, neue Paradigmen des menschlichen Zusammenlebens zu entwickeln und vorzuleben. Eine neue Geschichte des Menschseins, wenn du so willst. Intentional Communities und Eco-Villages sind hier ein ganz großes Thema. Viele sind gerade erst am Entstehen, einige gibt's schon seit vielen Jahren. Wie wir unser menschliches Potenzial gemeinsam und im Einklang mit der Natur entfalten können, das ist eine Frage, die mich persönlich schon seit langem fasziniert und daher ist Costa Rica auch so ein wunderbarer Ort, um tiefer einzutauchen in die Thematik. Und ich freue mich ganz besonders, dir heute Dosal Stieglitz vorzustellen. Er ist einer, den hier in Santa Teresa irgendwie alle kennen. Diego ist Mitgründer der Zunya-Community. Das ist eine aufstrebende Gemeinschaft in der kleinen Nachbarortschaft Mal Pais. Mit 35 Hektar Land, am Strand gelegen, ist Zunya hier fast jedem ein Begriff. Ein fein abgestimmtes Wochenprogramm kannst du dir da vorstellen, das jede Woche per WhatsApp-Gruppe ausgesendet wird, bestehend aus Yoga-Klassen, Breathwork-Sessions, Workshops zu den unterschiedlichsten Themen, Kirtan-Nachmittagen, Filmabenden, Soundhealings, einem wunderschönen Sacred Tree mitten am Grundstück, einem Beach Garden. Es ist irgendwie fast ein bisschen zu schön, um wahr zu sein. Und einer Mission, die Zunya-Community mit vielen anderen bewussten Gemeinschaften teilt.
By principle, we want to protect nature, we want to develop regenerative practices, and we want to figure out what are the best practices to adopt as an individual and as well as a collective or as a community to be able to promote a more sustainable way of living moving forward.
Wie unglaublich viel Arbeit es ist, eine solche Vision zum Leben zu erwecken und was Diego dabei hilft, mit Zweifeln und Ängsten umzugehen, das erzählt er uns im Interview. Dazu spannende Antworten auf die Frage, was wir von Communities wie Zunya für unsere moderne Welt lernen können, ohne unbedingt in einer leben zu müssen. Und Diego räumt auf mit dem verstaubten Hippie-Klischee und inspiriert uns, wieder näher zusammenzurücken und gemeinsam eine schönere Welt zu erschaffen. Und bevor es jetzt gleich losgeht mit dem Interview mit Diego, habe ich noch großartige Neuigkeiten für dich aus meiner kleinen, aber wie ich finde, sehr feinen Welt, denn meine Website ist endlich und ganz offiziell online. Ab sofort findest du unter www.jakobhorvath.com alle Infos zu meinen Coaching-Angeboten, meinen Live-Meditationen, meiner persönlichen Geschichte und mehr. Ja, ich freue mich einfach so sehr über diese virtuelle Homebase, die jetzt endlich nach irgendwie gefühlten 2 Jahren Arbeit online ist und ich mag dich gerne einladen, dort mal vorbeizuschauen und wenn du magst, auf einen Kaffee zu bleiben. Gerade ist auch für mein Deep Dive Programm wieder ein Platz frei geworden. Das ist mein 12-wöchiges Coaching-Programm für Abenteurer und Mutmenschen, in dem du meinen vollen Support und meine exklusive Begleitung in deinen Veränderungsprozessen bekommst. Du lernst dich selbst besser kennen und machst dir mentale Gewohnheiten, Glaubenssätze und innere Blockaden bewusst, um sie dann Schritt für Schritt zu transformieren. Wir stärken dein Selbstvertrauen in diesen Sessions, öffnen Räume für deine persönliche, berufliche und spirituelle Weiterentwicklung. Und du lernst, Herausforderungen mit Neugierde zu begegnen und mutige Entscheidungen aus dem Herzen zu treffen. Mit inkludiert sind 10 virtuelle One-on-One-Sessions, die wir auf deine Bedürfnisse maßschneidern. Unterschiedliche Coaching-Techniken, geführte Meditationen, Atemübungen, Mentaltrainings und Breathwork-Sessions, je nachdem, was dich gerade am besten unterstützt. Dazu bekommst du Zusammenfassungen und Worksheets mit Übungen nach jeder Session, die Aufzeichnungen der Meditationen und meine private Telefonnummer für die Zwischendurch-Begleitung per Voice Messenger. Alle Infos zum Deep Dive Programm, zu den Einzelsessions und mehr findest du auf www.jakobhorvath.com. Und ich bin einfach so aufgeregt, das jetzt mit dir teilen zu können und dir diese Website mal ganz offiziell vorzustellen. Genau auf dieser Website findest du dann auch einen Link, um dir mit mir einen kostenlosen Discovery Call zu vereinbaren, in dem wir offene Fragen klären und gemeinsam herausfinden, ob wir zusammenpassen und, wenn ja, wie dich eine Zusammenarbeit bestmöglich unterstützen kann. Und apropos näher zusammenrücken, dem Thema dieser Podcast-Folge, ab Mittwoch, dem 26. Mai, biete ich wieder wöchentliche Live-Meditationen an. Immer am Mittwochabend von 19.30 Uhr bis 20.30 Uhr. Tauchen wir gemeinsam ein in die fantastische Welt des Augenblicks. Mit einer Fülle unterschiedlicher Meditationstechniken stärken wir die Verbindung zu dir selbst und dem Größten in dir. Manche von den Meditationen sind still wie der Sternenhimmel, andere stehen ganz im Zeichen der Lebendigkeit. Von Osho bis Buddha, von Pranayama bis Vipassana, von Indisch bis Hawaiianisch. Als kleines Willkommensgeschenk und Dankeschön für euch als Hörerinnen und Hörer dieses Podcasts bekommt ihr mit dem Gutscheincode Community Bliss bis zum 2. Juni 5 € Rabatt auf alle Meditationsangebote inklusive 10er und 5er Blöcke und auch auf die 5 € Schnupper-Session. Das heißt, das Ausprobieren ist mit dem Gutscheincode für dich bis zum 2. Juni kostenlos. Ich würde mich unheimlich freuen, wenn ich dich in einer der Soul Sessions kennenlernen darf. Den Link zu den Namaste Ole Soul Sessions und den Gutscheincode findest du in den Shownotes. So, und jetzt habe ich genug gequatscht. Los geht's mit dem inspirierenden und wie ich finde unheimlich spannenden Interview mit Dosal Stieglitz. Ich wünsche dir ganz viel Freude damit.
Hola Diego, bienvenidos al podcast.
Muchas gracias.
Mucho gusto. Great pleasure to have you in the podcast. We won't continue in Spanish, rather in English if you prefer.
That's okay.
It's great to have you, and I'm very much looking forward to spend some time with you talking about your passion, your mission, your vision. And I think there's a lot to talk about. We met the other day at the Zunya Vision presentation, and you're sharing this every week with people, what Zunya is all about, what the community is about, what your vision is all about, where you want to go. So it came to me that it's very important to you to share with as many people as possible. And I thought I would love to know more about your take, your approach to community, and yeah, what this can actually do for the world.
Thank you so much.
How we can, tap into that potential of community more.
Totally. Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely one of my driving forces at the moment is to be able to reach out to as many people as we can. We believe that what we are doing is just giving ourselves a chance and have the willingness to try something different. We are not saying that we have any type of solution to fix any of the problems. We just have the willingness to try a new way of doing things and using sustainable practices and a regenerative approach into trying to figure out what's the best way to live moving forward into the future.
Yeah.
And the way we do it is that there's a lot of communities that are doing really beautiful things, but they are perceived as not so open by many people that are not participating within those processes. Mm-hmm. And for us, what we want to be able to share is that we want to be as open as we can. And one of the reasons why we do that presentation every Wednesday is because we don't want to raise any concerns with the people that are living in the locality or around the area. And there's a lot of gossip going on already of what are we going to do. And there's obviously, they say, small town, big hell. So what we say is I cannot take the time to try and go and convince everyone, but the doors are open for everyone and anyone who is willing to listen to what we want to do and they want to take the time to come and into our property and learn more about the vision. The doors are always open and people can come and participate in the vision presentation and ask whatever questions or doubts they have, as well as enjoy the program so that they can start learning a little bit of the philosophy of what we want to share.
So maybe you can share with us a little bit, so to give people an idea what Zunya is all about and what your vision is all about. Maybe you can share a little bit to give people an idea, what is Zunya?
So the way we refer to the project is as a regenerative living system, which is not the easiest description. We decided to take a regenerative approach because we believe that being sustainable is not enough. Like trying to be neutral in a world that we've done so much harm, like we have a long debt with Mother Earth that we have to be able to fix. So the regenerative approach is we understand that every action that we have is going to have an impact, and we want to make sure that that impact is a positive one. Bringing, let's say, a global view into the locality of the little town where we are establishing ourselves, which is Mal Pais, located in the southern tip of the peninsula of Nicoya. And then the living system part of that component is that we recognize that every structure that is too stiff, it tends to break over time. So we want to have the flexibility that is necessary in order to continue learning from the process. So we've been living in Costa Rica for a little bit more than a year and a half already. And there's 12 of us now living in Costa Rica, which are part of the management and some of the collaborators. We have 36 collaborators working in the project at the moment. And the more time that we spend here, the more that we continue fine-tuning on the vision, and it allows us to continue grounding and grinding on what we want to do. So to make it more simple, it's like a 2.0 version of an eco-village. So there's many eco-villages emerging in Costa Rica. Some of them are already established and thriving, and there's many eco-villages around the world. There's around 10,800 eco-villages registered today in a global eco-village platform. And what we want to do with our approach is that the way people perceive these eco-villages is as there's always a prejudice, no? Because they are not so open as we mentioned before. So what we want to be able is to build a bridge where our goal is to be able to inspire as many people as we can to consider an alternate way of living. And the way we are structuring the different components on the project is that we are breaking it down in 3 different tiers, no? First, the people that are starting to be open to the possibility to travel with purpose. And those people, they are being called to come to Costa Rica because Costa Rica is positioning itself as such a pioneering country, at least on the protection of the environment, which is crucial at the moment.
Yeah, so, they have like 98% renewable energy.
Exactly.
Right? And a lot of this. It's a role model for many countries.
It's an experiment. The only problem is that let's say that the superpowers today, they are not using it as an example. So they announced that they're going to do this summit where they are inviting the most powerful countries to redefine how do we need to live moving forward into the future. And Costa Rica was not invited because it's too small, so they don't consider it. But it's a really beautiful example of how protecting the environment can benefit on the long-term vision of a country. And right now Costa Rica is benefiting so much from that because you have people from all over the world coming to enjoy and to nurture their processes from this nature. So what we want to do at Zunya is that we want to be accessible to them. So the first component that we offer is a really beautiful hospitality experience for short and medium-term stay, so people can come and have a glimpse of what Zunya is. And during this stay, what we do is that we offer them a glimpse of what type of life we are having, because we don't want to be perceived as if we're trying to sell any product. It's more we are sharing the way we live, no? And there's a bunch of us that are trying to figure out what is the best way to live moving forward, and we want to share that with as many people as we can.
Okay, what is the way of living that you share?
The way is, first of all, to be honest and to be as transparent as we can. And the way we are doing it is that it's really difficult to be sustainable today, and it's really challenging to become a regenerative project. So we haven't figured that out. We are doing the best we can every day to try to go every day a little step forward towards being more regenerative and being more sustainable. But at the moment, with the capacity that we have and with the, let's say that the restraints that we have regarding our dependence on the traditional supply chain to receive some of the inputs that we get, part of the food that we get, it's still coming in plastic and in certain types of packaging that we cannot transform. So, but we want to get there. No, we don't have a solution today, but we are doing every day the effort in order to get there. Because the waste management component of becoming a regenerative project is quite important. And the only way to have a a reduced waste operation is by not depending on the traditional supply chain. But that is a work in progress because we have to activate different food production programs that we're going to do within our property. But since we don't want to cut down any trees, we are only optimizing the areas that were cut down in the past before we acquire the land. And then we start collaborating with local producers in the area so that they can be inspired by us because we could consume their goods if they would take a more a permaculture approach or a more organic approach towards their food production and their practices that they use. So it's like it's a fine balance in between doing the right thing and recognizing all the other things that you can do with the capacity that we have today, no? And then the other thing is we don't want to be perceived as the owners of the truth, no? A lot of these eco villages or places that are promoting an alternate way of living, they could be perceived as dogmatic or a little bit cultish. Yeah. And since we want to be open, what we say is we know no truth. We're trying to figure it out on our own. What we believe is that the war to end all wars is a war for our own human heart. And first we have to find our own balance and inner peace. And once we find that balance and inner peace, then we can start connecting with each other and then we can start honoring and respecting nature. But it all starts with the individual and then the effort should be in a collective way. And that is part of that experiment, which is, let's say that by principle, we want to protect nature. We want to develop regenerative practices and we want to figure out what are the best practices to adopt as an individual and as well as a collective or as a community to be able to promote a more sustainable way of living moving forward. And it's an experiment because we are learning a lot every day and sometimes we adopt certain methodologies or certain workshops where we realize that it doesn't align with the process of the community today. And that allows us to learn from the mistakes. So whenever we are not making mistakes, I usually tell to the team that we are in a comfort zone. So we are doing something wrong. So if we want to continue expanding, we need to be able to be willing to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes so that we can fast prototype and continue integrating those lessons into our process.
Yeah. And that is interesting because this is something that can be really felt once you visit Zunya. So you have those workshops, you have quite an open and tight schedule for the whole week. There are yoga classes, different meditations, breathwork sessions, dance events, and workshops on all different topics. So you really take it serious to explore that field and invite people. Actually, basically everyone can come and can offer a class if it's aligned.
Exactly.
And you check out, okay, is this valuable, what this person has to offer? And then, okay, you can have a class here. You can offer your gifts. And that community flavor, I think, is well appreciated in this area as well, because a lot of people you talk to, especially in Santa Teresa and Mal Pais, everybody knows about Zunya.
Thank you so much.
And if you ask around, what are you doing tonight? Oh, you go to Zunya, there's this workshop, or we had this, I don't know, meditation the other day. And you said something that stuck with me in your vision presentation. And you said you try to close the gap, and I think that is now connected to what you were saying before, the 3 different tiers. You try to close the gap between 2 very different kind of people, actually, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm trying to sum up what I understood. There is that kind of people that spent their life so far traveling, exploring life, making a whole bunch of different experiences, learning. I don't know, those are usually yoga teachers, or I don't know, to go with the stereotype. But these people usually don't have tons of money. On the other hand, there are people who spent their life so far building up businesses, making money, having a lot of possessions, but they might lack a sense of deeper purpose. Nowadays, they are waking up to that purpose and realizing, okay, now I have a lot of money, but there's something missing. And you try to bring those 2 groups together.
Exactly.
Correct?
That's the experiment. You said it perfectly. It's the people that have dedicated their lives to the accumulation of material and financial wealth. They are usually the ones that are struggling with purpose. And the reason why they are causing so much destruction in the world is because they're trying to fill in a void with material things, and it won't work, no? And then on the other half, we have the people that have dedicated their lives to the development of their gifts and their passions, and they are usually struggling with the energy of the money. So what happens if we create a space where these two can coexist, where these people come to find purpose and these people become the host by sharing their gifts and their passions to inspire these people to find a more harmonious way of living, let's say, so that they stop causing so much harm into the world. Because what we believe is that the most beautiful things in life are the most basic ones, and most of them are usually free. We just have to have the awareness in order to identify them and to enjoy them, no? And we start to let go of a lot of preconditioning and programming that we've received in a egocentric society where we grew up in different cities around the world. And we start to realize about the value of nature and how to honor it and how to respect the connection that we have first with ourselves, then with one another, and then the importance of being immersed and in a direct relation with nature, and how much it nurtures our process in order to be able to live at peace. Because I believe that that is the most basic thing that we can ask as a human is, I want to have peace, no, in my life. And we forgot how to have peace because of the way we were brought into the world, and because of how the system has evolved over time, which it could be, I think it has been evolving unconsciously into the monster that it became today. And how do we break free from that way of thinking in order to realize that we could be living heaven on earth today? Nothing has to change. We just have to have the willingness to start making the right choices towards the way we want to live moving forward. Yeah. And that is that balance, bro. And that's why it's also an experiment, because a lot of people would say, no, these people don't want to mix with these people, but I don't know. So far, with as you were mentioning on the process, with the let's say that we are creating the conditions for the people that have the gifts, for them to feel empowered to share them, and we are creating or co-creating the infrastructure for the people that want to receive those gifts or find them or develop them to come and feel safe, and create like these more. Like a symphony between these two worlds to see how they relate and how they can grow and learn from one another. And also you have people who actually financing the project as well, because that would be my next question. That it obviously it needs a lot of money. You need to buy a huge land, and the property is huge. Like how many acres? We have 33 hectares, which is 84 acres more or less. Yeah. So that's a huge land right next to the beach. You need a lot of money to build properties, build houses, organize all the things. You even did scientific studies. Maybe we can touch on that a little bit later. And so what is the business model behind it? Where do you get the money from? So at the moment, we've been really blessed because I was able to be really successful on the financial side at a young age. I grew up in Mexico City, and I started my first company when I was 17 years old, and it took me up until I was 33 years old to realize that that was enough and that was not the answer. How old are you now? 36. And then in this process of this exploration, so I grew up in a family where I was raised like I would say I was raised like a prince in the high Mexican society. And then when I was between 20 to 21 years old, I wanted to work for my family, let's say for the family business before, when I was 17, and it didn't work out, so I started my own company. It was a wood company? Yeah, a wood company, sustainable wood materials, import and export of sustainable wood materials. And then when I was 21, my father lost all of his money or most of his fortune, and he was really successful financially. But I was given throughout my childhood everything in excess, no? A lot of love, a lot of care, a great education, and too many material things. And when I was 21, which is like such an important age for you to either continue depending on the family or break free from it, I was already independent in a way. I was not living in abundance, but I was independent. Yeah. And as my father was crashing, I was just taking off as an entrepreneur. So I was driven for many years by an egocentric impulse, which was, I'm going to prove to everyone that I can do better than my dad. And I was able to become really successful at a really young age, up until I was 29 years old. And I decided to take the rebel's path. So I decided to experience life in extreme, everything. Too travels, the experimentation with different types of substances, financial success, and it got to a point where I crashed and I had a massive breakdown. And then it took me 2 years to put myself back together, to save my companies. In that process, I sold part of my company to a private equity fund in Mexico, and then I was in a really good position again. After having this massive breakdown is when I realized about what are the true things that matter in life. And I decided that I was going to continue developing because I was putting myself back together from a terrible rupture, no?
Yeah.
It got to a point where I was being given anxiety pills, antidepressants, antipsychotic pills, and lithium, which for me is the most toxic poison that you can give to a human because you become like a vegetable. So nothing becomes, you are just breathing and eating and sleeping, and there is nothing more transcendental than that in your life. The good things don't mean anything, the bad things don't mean anything. And when I was stuck in this process, I realized that I didn't want to live life like that. And I started to break free and trying to take one of these medicines at a time away from my system. And everything that I had to do in order to put myself back together was what I got to a point where I said, okay, so I took life to the extreme, and for sure I am crazy, but I was not as crazy as I thought. So how do I start to build a better life in a sustainable manner? So I continued on this path, and I continued developing and finding which were my gifts and my passions, and strengthening my, let's say, like my daily practice. So yoga, meditation, breath work, proper conversations, the diet that I was having. And in this process, I created a community that we had a Burning Man camp, and this allowed me to continue like building a much bigger network. My objective at this point was, how can I reach to the people, like the wealthiest or the most powerful people in the world, so that I can help them become more aware, and that way we have a bigger possibility of having a positive impact in the world. Wow. And in this process, I met a really incredible group of people, and one of these people that I met, one of them, he introduced me to the owners of this land. So he brought me to Costa Rica, and he said, Diego, you've been searching for land for a while already. Yeah. Like, I believe I have the right land for you. And we came and we found it. And then another member of this community, his name is Flavio, he was another one of the co-founders. And the last one was Javier, also, that he was part of the co-creation of the original community, let's say. And we had the possibility that between Flavio and myself, we had the financial capacity to be able to invest on the project, on the concept development, as well as on the acquisition of the land. And this put us in a really comfortable position. So Flavio left his company, he was in the tech industry, and I left my companies, and I kept my shares, but I stopped being an operating partner. I moved here to Costa Rica, and we've been investing our own resources up until today. Okay. And now we are in a position where we acquire the land, we have the environmental permits that we require in order to start building the next phase of Zunya. And now we're going to start, we are in conversations with potential strategic investors, which are impact investors. So it's people that understand that we are not only driven by profits, that our intentions are to be able to redefine the way we are living moving forward into the future. Yeah. And that we have two main drivers. One is energy efficiency in everything that we do. So how do we optimize the use of the best possible resources? And the other one is the redistribution of wealth. So they have to understand that for sure we are for profit, but we are not driven by profits, and that their capital is going to be safe and is going to be paid back a fair return on their investment, but that the way we measure success is not only on the financial aspect, also on the social impact that we can have in the area, as well as on the environmental impact. And how do we define these KPIs is the conversations that we are having with them, because when you're looking for such a specific type of capital, you close 99% of the doors already, no? So to find the right partners, they have to have their heart in the right place, as well as to understand how to measure the success over their investment by understanding that we are driven by our capacity to have a positive impact in the area. Yeah. So we are having these conversations with people. We're fortunate because with the operation that we have today in the casitas that you've been, and with the programming that you mentioned, we are profitable. So we are covering the expenses of every collaborator that is participating in the project, as well as the management that is overseeing like the long-term view of the project. So we are not in a stressful situation where if we don't raise capital, the project is gonna stop working. Yeah. And we still have enough capital runway in order to continue developing up until, let's say, having the next proof of concept, which would be the deployment of the new infrastructure that will be coming by the end of this year.
Yeah. So when I listen to you, I think it's so interesting, because I think a lot of people have the opinion of a community like this, a conscious community, a spiritual community too, to be some kind of hippies living there on the beach, having the nice lifestyle. But then after all, there is still some very solid business foundation. There is investments that need to be done. There is a lot of conscious people, actually. There are scientific studies being made. So I think it's a whole different approach actually to life that is far away from the stereotype of a hippie community.
Exactly.
It's actually a very serious thing. Do you think the world is ready to perceive more of this?
It's really interesting. I believe that there's a lot of people that are more advanced in their processes, that they are tapping into a really similar frequency. Let's say that we are downloading the same information, and the opportunity, which is really beautiful, is how do we tropicalize that information or that knowledge that is being given to us, and we manifest it into a reality by using the knowledge and implementing that understanding of how we should live moving forward. So for me, what's truly important is that if we create a project that is completely isolated from the reality of the world, the impact that we're going to have is really limited. So we still need to play on the capitalist rules today. And ideally, we will have the flexibility to continue evolving over future, and because our objective is to redistribute wealth. So everyone that is collaborating in the project, they benefit from the success. Okay, so investors, they have a play, but also every one of us that are working on making this a reality over the long term. Once investors recover their investment, we should have the biggest upside on the equation. So investors recover investment and a decent return, and then it depends on the efforts of the community for us to be able to over-deliver. And if we over-deliver, the biggest upside of that should benefit every single soul that is collaborating in making this a reality. And if we want to expand the philosophy to other places in the world, let's say that Costa Rica or Zunya is our first prototype, the same way as if we were creating like a technology where we have software and hardware, which we refer as soulware and hardware, okay? And the hardware is the infrastructure that is required in order to be able to curate the experience on the physical place. And the soulware are the invisible structures that we are creating in order to be able to coexist in harmony with one another. So how do we learn what is the best way to live in community moving forward? Because we forgot, our ancestors at some point, they were masters at this, and then we that wisdom got eroded over time, and we got to the mess where we are today. So we are trying to figure that out, and we're trying to remember where are we coming from, and how do we walk each other home. But in this experiment, we still need to be able to play under the current rules of the system, because we believe that we are not going to change the system. We can have an impact and we can create like a counterbalance in the system, but it's too big and it's too broken, and it's broken since its foundation. So what happens if we create our own way of living? Like we create a sample of how the world should be moving forward, starting with the 36 people that we are today and growing up to the 330 people that we plan to have coexisting within the space between families, so children and the parents, teachers, artists, scientists. And then once we have a proof of concept with this prototype, and once we have a watertight prototype, our idea is to bring and start building other villages in strategic places around the world, so that this small sample of a system, once we reach certain critical mass, then we can expand it and grow organically. And at some point we can be having exchange of goods and services outside from the current system. And now with the technologies that we have today, and without going into the detail of the proper use of blockchain technology, we could be developing a token that can allow us to collaborate not only within the members of our community, but to connect with other incredible communities that are emerging all around the world.
So just to clarify, have your own digital currency, basically.
In a way. Once we reach a certain critical mass, which it will take us time, but there is that possibility, which it didn't exist in the 60s when the hippie revolution started, So I believe that we should recognize the efforts of all these hippie communes that are emerging around the world and that had emerged since before us, because they did a lot of, they were breaking ground, And now what we can do is that we can stand in the shoulders of giants in order to be able to define what is the direction that we want to go and what is the level of impact that we want to have, How can we inspire more people? So we could use Zunya as, let's say the physical experience of Zunya has certain limitations because of our capacity to host and to receive people. But what if we generate the right content, or what we are doing right now by you inviting me into your podcast is that we can start spreading our philosophy or our way of thinking through digital platforms, or sharing the content that is being generated on the physical space, and hopefully then be able to inspire as many people as possible.
Yeah, that would be, I think that's an interesting question now, because many people I know, they just love to live in their cities. They love to have their own apartments. They maybe are in touch with the neighbor, maybe not. Maybe that's fine for them. And then they live their normal lives and they're happy with that. Still, they also believe, yes, we should have more sustainable lifestyles. Yes, we should be nicer to nature and to each other. Yes, we should connect more to ourselves and to the planet and everything. So what can people actually learn, or what can modern societies in general learn to really try to scale it up? What can we learn from communities like this on a broad scale?
For me, like I totally respect and I understand that there's a lot of people that they are super engaged with the process of living in a city, and they love it, and they love their work and they love what they're doing, and I absolutely respect that way of living. What I believe now is that we need to be super conscious and really aware that our choices matter more than ever. No, like we are really destroying the planet, and we depend on an infinite economic growth on a finite planet. So we are there's not many resources left, and if we are not able to start understanding that our choices, which type of country do we want to live in, what type of city do we want to support, where do we want to pay our taxes, what type of corporation do I want to support with my money, if we are not properly aware of that, then we have little chances of survival. Or if we survive, there's going to be too many casualties in that process, and there's going to be a lot of turmoil and a lot of chaos for the ones that survive to survive. I believe that we are still on time in order to change that, but we need to start taking things into matter. No, we need to become more active participants in that. And I don't see people that are living in New York that are not ordering a plastic straw in a restaurant for them contributing positively in any way to any sustainable practice. Okay, and unfortunately, that there is a perception where the people that are living in the cities, where the tiny sacrifices that they do, they feel that they're already doing something good for the world. And I think that the situation is much more worse than what we believe, and that we should start considering what are more potential solutions.
Right. And what is exactly the power of the community? So what is it that the community can deliver here to that process?
Like, we come as individuals now, and we have to find that balance and that inner peace. But in order to be able to reach that place where you are truly living in balance and inner peace, you need to be able to be living in a space that provides the conditions for you to be able to nurture that process. And unfortunately, when you are not connected in community and you have this individualistic point of view of the world, it's constantly you against the world, no? Even though you have partners and you have collaborators, it's usually a competitive mentality. Yes. And I believe that this shift in our consciousness should be an invitation for us to start thinking more of what are the best ways for us to collaborate. We don't have to compete. If you're doing something incredible, how can I learn from you so that there could be more of us doing something incredible? And the power of community is that if you really want to be honest with the way you are living, and if you want to be honest and true to yourself, you need the support of other people, because we live in cycles, no? And this time dimension is governed by cycles, and everything has a beginning and an end. So we need to recognize in what part of our process we are, because sometimes we are ahead and another times we are behind. And when you are behind, you need the support of a community to nurture you and to nurture that process of you so that you are more vulnerable, but you have the support of other people in that vulnerability. And when you are ahead, you support other people that are more vulnerable because you are the driving force at that point. And like that way we are in this dance where if we are always sprinting, we are gonna burn ourselves out, no? So we recognize that this is a collaboration where we are nurturing the process of each other, and sometimes I'm gonna be the one that is the driving force, and another times I would hope for you or for other member of the community to stand up, to hold me and to stand up for the challenge.
Beautiful. I love how you put that, because that is really how we survived as a species, basically, right?
Totally.
Look back kind of hundreds of thousands of years. We lived in little tribes, and if it was only us by ourselves competing with the world around us, nobody would have survived.
Absolutely.
So in that way, it's really going back to the roots, finding the foundation of what it means to be human, collaborate with each other, share, create, co-create. And that is something that I don't need to travel to Costa Rica to. I can establish such communities wherever I live, in every city. I can try to find people who are actually coming together, co-creating beautiful things, holding each other, supporting each other.
Absolutely.
That's really the true power, right? That the foundation.
Absolutely, and you see it if we have one proof of concepts on a larger scale, because there's many communities around the world that support each other that are an absolute minority, and they are thriving. And the only reason why they are thriving is because they have the power of community, because they support each other, because they are organized in the decisions that they make, because whenever someone is in trouble, he receives the support of the community. And it's really, it feels amazing to know that it's not only about yourself, no? That you can trust, and you can also, in a way, not depend on others, but know that whenever things get complicated, there is more than one that is willing to fight back and to be able to push through those challenging moments. And I think it's a really beautiful experiment. And as you say, you don't have to take the drastic decision to come to Costa Rica or to go to a remote place to be able to do that. Now, if we would give the right use of the technologies that we have, and we would start using technology in our favor instead of us becoming servants and enslaved by the technologies that we created, we could use any of these digital platforms in order to tap into people that are doing great things, and to understand that the more connected we are with ourselves, the more we can find people that are connected with themselves, and that allows us to be able to build super strong connections with one another. You don't have to know someone from childhood or for many years in order to be able to have a strong relationship. Right. Maybe we met a couple of times already, and understanding that we have so many things in common and that we are like-hearted individuals, then this opens up for a world of possibilities for us to figure out what's the best way to collaborate and to support each other.
Yeah, and the very first step on this journey is to reconnect with yourself. You just mentioned that.
Yeah, that's a pillar, bro.
Sorry?
That's a pillar, to find balance and inner peace. Yeah. Because otherwise we are pretending. And this is one of those things that is really challenging, is that there's a lot of people that are trying to help others, but they are not in peace with themselves. So they are just escaping from the reality and trying to cover up. But once you find true balance, when you realize, and this is the most beautiful part of this human experience, is that life becomes abundant and everything starts to self-organize. So you start to appreciate and to be grateful for the challenges, and at the same time you start to enjoy the beautiful moments. But whenever things get dark or more complicated, you recognize that it is a beautiful opportunity for you to expand or to grow, and you are grateful for it, and you receive those moments with an open heart, and life, the universe, the cosmos, God, however we want to refer to it, it automatically allows us to upgrade ourselves, and then we receive more abundance. And it's like this nurturing cycle, that the more aligned we are with ourselves, the more that we are open to receive, and the more that we are willing to give. And then it's a process that I believe is infinite.
So that is actually the real way of moving forward as humanity, like putting the human evolution on a new level is by first and foremost reconnecting to ourselves, finding that peace within, creating, as Gandhi said, the change within ourselves that we want to see in the world.
Totally.
And communities are the way to support that process in probably the best way possible, wherever that community is.
Yes, absolutely.
That's beautiful.
See,
Diego, you even did that really impressed me, actually. You did a scientific study on the land where you know exactly what kind of trees are growing there, what kind of animals are crossing the land, so that you don't build any artificial barriers for them and stuff like that. So that connection to nature, how does that fit into that process of self-realization and connecting to yourself?
So when we found the land, I was searching for land for 7 years. So the process and the learning curve was already really deep. And at some process, I went to see a really respected architect in Latin America. And he told me, look, Diego, if you really want to do a project of regeneration, don't pretend that you're going to design a project from the comfort of an office in Mexico or in London or in New York. You have to find a thriving village of peaceful people that is at the right scale for your project and become one with it, okay? And that's why the quest, instead of searching for land that was 150 hectares or 500 hectares in the middle of nowhere because it was cheaper, we said, no, let's find a smaller piece of land that is big enough for us to have a proof of concept and it's small enough not to sound like a crazy utopia, but it has to be next to a town. And there, when we in that quest, we went to Portugal and we went to different places. But when we came here, that we found this little town of Mal Pais, it has 1,100 inhabitants, is when we realized, okay, this is the place, no? So the conditions and the community and the size, everything makes sense. And we are 5 kilometers away from Santa Teresa, which is one of the most diverse destinations in Costa Rica. So it was, way too good to be true, no? So now we have the land and we said, okay, so if we start bringing in the architects and start designing the project from the comfort of living in a city, we're going to end up destroying the beauty of the place because we are not being conscious of what are the important things that we have to respect and to honor. So we moved to Costa Rica. I left my business, I come to Costa Rica, and when we came to Costa Rica, we decided to bring a group of experts from Colombia, from Mexico, and from Costa Rica. And it's a collaboration between agronomers, anthropologists, archaeologists, because we have an archaeological site in the area, geologists, biologists, and hydrologists.
Wow.
Okay, and they were coming and they were spending long periods of time here in the land to try to identify how every natural element can impact on the land as well as the social and cultural elements. So we started to map out what were the conditions, what had happened in the past what were the conditions that nature created for itself so that it could be thriving, no? And so we started to understand what are the risks, what are the opportunities, what are the downfalls that we can have. And in order to be able to create what we call, it's a regenerative project, which is like the nervous system of the project this is going to be the foundation of everything that we're going to put on top of this land. And once we finish with this, which is a productive landscape project, a project of agroforestry, how to produce food forest, a hydrological project, which is how are we going to give 4 cycles to the water so that we can use 1 drop of water 4 times in the process, as well as how are we going to captivate as much water as we can during the rainy season because it rains a lot, and we want to be self-sufficient during the 3 months of extreme dry season. So what type of project do we have to design for that, and how do we want to captivate this water? So the easiest way to captivate the water is to allow to slow the water rundown. The topography of the land goes from 4 meters above the sea level, 4.5 meters or around 12 foot above the sea level, up to 145 meters above the sea level or 450 foot above the sea level. So the natural water rundown of the property during the extreme rainy season, it has been evolving over millions of years and it's perfect. So how do we slow down the water rundown so that we can allow for the water to infiltrate underground, and that is our biggest water reservoir. Okay, and it's the cheapest way to store water. Then we create big water reservoirs that are open into the sky, which are like small lakes within the property, where we provoke flooding areas that nurture the wildlife in the area, both the flora and the fauna, and so that we can store that water, and it would be the second most accessible way to take it out. And the third option that we have is the potable water that is provided through the aqueduct that crosses in front of our property. So what we wanted to do is that we can co-create a project that is resilient in order to withstand the unknowns and the challenges that we might face with the global warming or the change in the global weather. So how do we create the conditions for the project to be resilient, and hopefully in 15, in 20, in 30 years, the project in its own is still a thriving community because it is self-sustainable on many aspects of the regenerative approach.
Wow. That is such a huge project. Like it's incredible how many small pieces coming together, forming this living system, as you say, right? It's really a living system. It's an organism, basically, right? let's conclude this very beautiful conversation with your personal approach to challenges, because that's something I'm very interested in. So creating such a big vision that is so much greater than yourself and going on with it and overcoming unforeseen challenges and obstacles. And so what is your personal approach to how do you keep going?
I would say first is like truly trusting the process, like honoring that you know that as long as you're willing to surrender to the process, like to let go of whatever is not meant for you and to accept whatever is brought for you, that gives you the trust and the knowing, most important, because it gets to a point where you know that you are being supported by I don't know, like bigger energies or a higher power that is trusting and that is giving you the responsibility to do what you're doing, as well as the support of the community. So let's say that at some points I could be the driving force, no? So I am the visionary that is pushing everyone to the limit, but at some points I am the one that I allow fear or doubt to come into my process because I had a conversation with someone that decided to plant a seed of fear into myself and to bring doubt into whatever we were doing, and then I have to deal with that doubt.
How do you deal with that?
Speaking about it, like sharing it with people that I trust, with members of the community that I really trust, where I say like, hey guys, like that was brought to my attention. This specific thing was brought to my attention and it's contaminating my process. Because my way of understanding life is that fear shouldn't exist. Like fear is not, it's such a toxic emotion, and I find fear as the duality of love. So if we are living in love, we shouldn't allow for fear to come into the process, but we are not perfect, no? And whenever that happens, you need to be in such an awareness within your being to recognize, okay, so I was intoxicated by fear, by the emotional poison of someone else, okay? So how am I gonna deal with that? So I can start asking myself 1,000 questions of what is gonna happen and how everything is gonna go south and that things are not gonna work out. Or I have the courage to speak the truth of the process that I am having with people that I trust. So I call the management or my partners, some of the co-founders or the co-creators in the project, and I tell them like, guys, I'm going through this. And it's really difficult as one of the co-founders to be willing to open up when my team is trusting me and my crazy ideas for us to be able to continue pushing. But whenever I have doubts and I share them with them, it would be, if I don't share them, then they would consume me internally. And I could definitely share them with Carlita, my fiance, that is the love of my life, and she definitely supports me a lot. But sometimes I need to be able to share it with other people so that we can gather more points of view, so that we can find the strongest solution for that specific thing. So I would usually open when trust is not enough and when the knowing is not enough and I am already contaminated, I would open up and I would speak my truth with members of the team, and I would allow them for them to be able to give me honest feedback. Hey, no, it's in your mind. This is perfectly covered. We already have this, or we got this permit, or we don't have to rush that decision. Why are you allowing for the future to contaminate your present? Because usually, in the present moment, everything is perfect all the time. No? And I have a teacher that tells me that everything is perfect. And if you would take the perfection out of the perfection, what would remain is still perfect. The only thing is that we don't have the perspective to recognize the big picture of things, no? So that's why trusting and knowing is like this dance. And whenever you get contaminated, is to share the truth, bro. And to share it in circle, that's the power of the community.
Yeah, vulnerability in your very personal community, whatever your community is, your closest friends, your family, your peers, and just be vulnerable with the process. Don't pretend to be super strong and perfect.
Exactly, because once you are already contaminated, your mind or your ego has you, it gets like a weak point, and it's gonna be attacking you on that department, no? So it's gonna be bullying your present moment all the time until you figure that out. If you don't find the courage to speak your truth, then it's as if your mind or your ego would have you on check. If you were playing chess between the heart and the mind, let's say that the mind has your heart in check. So you have to be able to find the courage and say, okay, so yeah, maybe I am tormenting myself, and all of the things that my mind all of the terrible things that my mind is telling me might be true, but if I share them and if I speak my truth, they're gonna dissipate so faster than you can imagine. And that is that dance where sometimes you are afraid of speaking your truth, but then you release and it's really beautiful.
Beautiful. Diego, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your vision, your ideas.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to share.
Great pleasure talking to you. Thank you, Diego. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Thank you so much.
Schön, dass du dabei warst bei dieser Episode von 1000 First Steps. Wenn du dich über die Themen in dem Podcast gerne austauschen möchtest, dann lade ich dich herzlich ein, deine Gedanken unter dem aktuellen Post auf Instagram @jakob.horvath oder per E-Mail an mail@1000firststeps.com mit mir und der Community zu teilen. Ich freue mich immer sehr, wenn ich lese und höre, was der Podcast bei dir bewirkt, was er in deinem Leben zum Positiven verändert. Wenn das bei dir auch so ist, dann kannst du mithelfen, dass ihn noch mehr Menschen hören können, indem du ihn mit deinen Freunden teilst, mit deinen Bekannten, deinen Kollegen, zum Beispiel als Screenshot in deiner Instagram-Story. Es würde mir auch viel bedeuten, wenn du mir eine Rezension und eine positive Bewertung auf iTunes hinterlässt. Ich danke dir von ganzem Herzen. Wenn du auf dem Laufenden bleiben möchtest, dann freue ich mich, wenn du Teil der Community wirst und dich für meinen Newsletter anmeldest. Dort wartet auch ein kleines Willkommensgeschenk auf dich und Infos zu Podcast-Folgen, Meditationen, exklusive Updates zu Abenteuern aus meiner kleinen Welt und mehr. Den Link zum Newsletter findest du in den Shownotes und auf meiner Website 1000firststeps.com. Ich bin Jakob Horvath, Visionscoach, Meditationstrainer und Autor von Weltnah, raus aus der Komfortzone, rein ins Leben. Das Buch über meine 14-monatige Weltreise mit wertvollen Impulsen für deine persönliche und spirituelle Weiterentwicklung. Danke, dass du hier dabei warst, dass du den Podcast hörst, dass wir ein paar Schritte gemeinsam gehen können. Wir hören uns nächsten Mittwoch wieder, wenn du möchtest. Bis dahin wünsche ich dir nur das Beste. Alles Liebe und Namaste. Dein Jakob.